Welcome to the Microsoft Partner Network podcast. Every week, we bring in industry leaders and Microsoft partners to talk about the big ideas shaping business and technology today. In today's episode, we're excited to talk to Gavriella Schuster, Corporate Vice President of Microsoft's worldwide channels and programs, about how she built her long career at Microsoft and how important it is to never stop learning. Hey, Gavriella, we're super happy to have you in the studio today. Thank you for being here. It's a big week for you. You're going to be at CRN's Women of the Channel Leadership Summit, doing a keynote. We just found out that today you're in CRN's Power 100 Women. So you're doing something right here in your career. Tell me a little bit about how you made it to corporate vice president. What's that journey like?
Well, so it is a journey of understanding what you're trying to do with your life and then making sure that you set out to do it. So when I will start with saying I had no idea this was the job that I wanted to do, but there were things in a job that I wanted. And so all I did was I kept pursuing having those things in my job. So, you know, when I actually was in college, I was going for a genetic engineering degree originally. And then my junior year, I found out that my dad had lost his job. And he had been in the same job for about 27 years. He was 55 years old. And it really pretty much crushed him. He lost his whole identity. And his whole ego. And so at that moment, I decided that I actually didn't want to be in a position where I was a subject matter expert, that I could be in a job for that long and lose touch with the market and with my own identity. And what I wanted to do was to be more of a generalist. And genetic engineering actually didn't sound very generalistic.
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
And so I went to the guidance counselor and I talked about, like, what else could I do? And what do I have credits for?
Yeah.
And I decided actually to switch my major and go into psychology. And I graduated with a degree in psychology, and then took my first job with a company called Cigna, which does a lot of things, but what I was doing was group health insurance, and they had a great management training program. And so in that program, they actually taught me how to be a manager, a general manager. And I learned a lot about managing people, managing process, helping customers, and putting customers first, and really enjoyed my 4.5 years there. And then from there, I actually took my first job in software. My husband and I decided to move from the East Coast out to the West Coast, and I worked for a small company called Aldus that was a desktop publishing software. And they were helping printmakers take what they used to do in big print shops and do it on a computer. And I loved that company. Paul Brainerd ran that company, and every customer knew him. He was probably an icon of that generation, and I loved the way he ran the company. Unfortunately, then he sold the company to a company called Adobe, which you probably are familiar with.
Yes, I am very familiar with them.
And they really took our publishing software off to the next level. And I worked for Adobe for about another year and a half after the acquisition, and decided to come work at Microsoft. So in all of those moves, what I was looking for was ways that I could continue to grow and keep up with changes in the industry and just continue to learn a lot more. So I came to Microsoft and And at Microsoft, I started in operations because up until that point, I had been doing a lot of customer service, tech support, operations kind of work. And
what year was that around?
That was in 1995.
1995, just to give some scale, like a time range here. Okay.
In 1995, Microsoft had $3 billion in revenue, 8,000 employees. And my very first job was to create a partner program.
Insane.
Yeah. And essentially it was because we had big partners like Dell and HP who did not want to talk to 39 marketing managers across those countries and say, hey, I want to be a partner. And so we needed something where they could more consistently partner with Microsoft. So I created that partner program. We created a few other kinds of global programs. And then I turned to the marketing teams and I said, wouldn't it be better if we were doing global marketing as opposed to building global programs from operations? Mm-hmm. And they were like, oh, that would probably be a good idea. So I was like, great. So I moved over into marketing
to
go do that. And I built out our training and certification organization and programs. And then we were launching some important products like SQL 7, which we thought was the very first enterprise-ready version of SQL. And we needed to do competitive recruit. So we created a program for Oracle DBA Recruit to SQL. And then we did another program for Novell AD Specialist to Windows 2000. And then I went off and had my first child. And so we left for 5 months.
5 months. Wow.
And when I came back, decided it was time to do something different. So I moved into our enterprise services organization. I did a few things there. Then I decided to move into our U.S. subsidiary and launched our new licensing programs and built out our licensing specialist communities and did our first enterprise agreement kind of deal desk activities. And then after about 5 years of doing that role, moved into the business groups to create a new product called the Microsoft Desktop Optimization Pack. And that was some acquisitions that we had to do, bringing together the Windows client and Windows Server teams. And then we were the first product to 1 million seats. We did that in less than 6 months. That was the fastest product to 1 million seats for Microsoft.
And that was around when?
That was in 2005.
Okay, so like 10 years.
So it was around the Vista time.
Yeah.
And so then we launched Vista. We launched Windows 7. I became the general manager for a Windows commercial business. And then when we were launching Windows 8, I decided that would be less fun for a commercial business. And so I moved over back into the U.S. subsidiary to lead our cloud and enterprise business at the time that we were starting up Azure. Wow, and helped us to really grow our Azure footprint in the U.S. subsidiary. I also ran our SQL Windows Server System Center business there. And then after about 3 years of doing that, a manager I'd had before asked me if I would come over back to the partner ecosystem and help reboot our partner ecosystem for the cloud. And so I came back to do that.
Kind of the channel you helped create.
The channel I helped create 20 years earlier.
You came back for it.
I came back to reboot it into the cloud. And so that was about 3 years ago. And yeah, I mean, so it's been a really fun career. And not so much, what I wasn't focused on was climbing the corporate ladder. It was more about finding things that I really enjoyed doing. So you can tell from the things that I've talked about, a lot of what I've done is starting up new businesses and then helping to turn around businesses that need to kind of reboot.
Yeah, you're almost like a mini CEO every single time you've restarted.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. So over all these times, you've really reinvented yourself. What did some of those decision points look like? What were you asking yourself? How did you know, I got to, shift a little bit here, shift a little bit here?
So for me, the key thing was to always be learning something new and always be growing. Because if you remember, the voice in my head said, hey, what you want to make sure that you do is that at any point in time, if you needed to leave that job, if you got laid off or anything, that you had really relevant skills in the marketplace and that your whole identity was not tied up in the job you had. It was inside you, something that I intrinsically knew I could do and apply anywhere. And so I looked at jobs by, could I learn something new? Would this improve my relevancy in the market? Would this give me an ability to learn something about the business that I haven't done before?
Sometimes I think about there's like, something's pulling you. Maybe it's money, or maybe it's a big company, or maybe it's a child. I don't know. But you have these moments where you kind of really have to look deep within, right? And look at yourself and be honest with yourself. How do you kind of handle those situations to stay truly honest with who Gavriella is?
Well, the most important thing about building your career, but more importantly, just building yourself as a human being, is to be authentic, to know what is important to you at any given time, what is really important. And those things do shift over time. As you have kids, what becomes really important is actually spending more time with them, or at least it did for me. When I was in the U.S. subsidiary, I actually decided after my second child that it was time for me to either stop working or go part-time, because I could not keep up the pace that I had up until that moment with my second child. I mean, when I was on maternity leave with Zach, I was like, man, I don't know how I would fit work back into this.
Right. It's a real concern.
And so I decided that I was going to try for part-time, and if that didn't work, then I was probably just going to take a break. And I came back and I proposed to a brand new manager that I had, hey, I think I need to work part-time. And he was just like, no way.
Right.
He was like, you have way too much to do even for a full-time job. There's no way I could let you work part-time. And I was like, well, all right. So I guess that means I have to find something else. And so I went off and I used my network, and I found another person that I had worked with before who was willing to let me go part-time in a new job. And I came back to my manager and I said, look, I found another job for part-time. So I would be very sad to leave this one, though, because I don't feel like I'm done. I feel like there's still a lot more to do, and I feel like I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
So, I think you can decide. I think it would take you 6 months to find someone to replace me and have them be at least as productive as I can be at part-time. So what I propose is that you let me run my job for 6 months part-time, and then we can decide if I have to come back full-time or if it works. And at the end of 6 months, he was just like, okay, it works. You do whatever you want.
And he said, okay.
So he said, okay. So I did that for about 3.5 years, and that was the best. I mean, like, if you ever want to know what is true work-life balance, it's working 3.5 days, not working 3.5 days.
Right.
It really frees up a whole lot of your time, actually.
Yeah. But I think you bring up something kind of important. We have males and females listening to our podcast. And this is a real thing that women have to think about, how we can have children and be amazing at our jobs. And it's so great that you were able to find a manager that let you take that risk. And I really hope that for those listening, especially for the men, we need those kind of advocates that let us try even things that are not traditional, so we can still contribute but have a family. And this, I mean, I hate the term work-life balance. I personally do, because I just want an integrated life. I just want to do amazing at work and do great things with my children. I love that story. I think that's the best part of your entire career journey. Personally, that's just mine. So thank you for telling that.
The key thing, and I think this applies to everybody, the key thing to being able to do that is to actually be able to set boundaries for yourself, to say, what is important to me at this moment, and then not to give up on those things that are very important to you. Because I know a lot of people who actually give up on things that are very important to them, and what it drives is a sense of resentment.
Yes.
Resentment to the work, resentment to the company, because nobody will ever be able to pay you enough to make up for the things that you gave up. And it's mostly because nobody even knows you ever gave them up. So don't do that.
Right. Just be honest.
Just be honest.
That's an amazing lesson. Thank you. I'm the young one here, so I can say that because I'm semi-new in my career. Gavriella, you became corporate vice president probably in the past year and a half. Gavriella, by the way, is well known in Microsoft to be one of the best leaders and managers in the entire company. She truly is. And so I think some of that is because you have inherent ways of how you approach your job, how you approach your work, and the people. There's some success factors. Can you talk about some of the things that are your critical success factors?
Well, I think the most important critical success factor is to always put the customer first. To think about any problem that you face first in terms of what is the customer thinking, what does the customer need, and how can we meet that customer's need better. More important than putting forth what our internal goals might be or revenue or growth, because those things come when you can delight the customer. And so to me, that's the most important critical success factor. The second thing is to really look around and say, how do I bring the organization along on this journey? Because nobody, no matter what company you're in, no matter how big, no matter how small, nobody can do it all. And so what you really need is you need to create a whole organic effort of people who believe in what you're doing. And if you find that you have an idea and you can't create that organic effort, then you need to modify what you think you're trying to do. Because generally, if you have an interesting idea, you help other people understand your vision, and then you help them build on that. You bring their voice to it and their point of view, and you can make something way more powerful collectively than you could individually. And then you get the power of the people behind you and with you and on that journey to actually continue to make that even better and stronger.
A lot of building influence. What are some ways to do that? When you're talking about trying to build that collaboration or modifying your plan, what do you do?
Well, so the first most important thing is don't fall in love with your own idea.
Okay. That is a good one.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And then they get so tied to it that they don't hear what other people are saying when they give them feedback, right? So, put your idea to paper.
Yeah.
And try to sketch it out. But do like a straw man. Don't try to get it perfect. Don't try to think about everything. Just put a straw man and an outline together and then start to socialize it. Bring it around to other people who might be interested in the same thing, who are trying to solve the same problem, who see that same challenge with the customer or thing the customer's trying to do. And you start to mold and shape that idea together collectively. And then you build on it and you do another turn of the crank, and then you build on it, you do another turn of the crank. And each time you might be bringing in different voices and different points of view to understand if it's a good idea and what it would really take to get it done and who you need in that journey. And you learn who are the people that are most passionate about it? What are the things that you think that are critical for that to be successful? And then who do you want to engage to bring that along? And you really get people bought in to the idea.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when then they take all of those voices and you actually put a plan. Right? So again, another place things fall apart is that then someone goes, okay, well, it's a good idea. And then they just start to execute before then there's a plan. So the next step really is you have to create a plan and say, now, what would it look like at the end? What's the outcome we want to get to? And then what do we think it would take to get from here to there? And you start to put together a plan and you enlist people in that plan and you build your influencers and you build along the way to help people stand behind that. And what you find is that your little idea becomes so much bigger and so many more people can take it into places that you never even imagined.
What you just showcased is really what it's like to be a leader. And I think probably most people don't go about things the way you just described. And truly the best versions of that are the leaders, And for those that are listening and want to be able to take their companies, maybe it's a 5-person company, maybe it's a 1,000-person company, and take everybody along the journey with them. I think Satya has done a great job here at making us believe. What's sort of the plan? How do I start to develop that personally as a leader? I'm thinking about myself so that I can influence others. What are some things they can start to do?
Well, so don't think of your idea as proprietary.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody owns an idea. What you can contribute, you can build, you can create a vision, and then you want to bring other people along. You want to scale that through other people. Whether you're running your own company and you want to scale it through your partners or your customers, whether you want to scale it through your investors, you need to have that backing and that support. And so don't be stingy with your ideas. Right? Work on them, build it up, and then over time, you'll find that it's much bigger than yourself, right? The second thing is don't be afraid to challenge the status quo, right? Examine assumptions. Really put them up on the board. Make sure you're looking at them and saying, is that really true? Or am I putting up my own obstacles, right? And that helps you to really figure out how do you break through. No problem cannot be overcome. Sometimes you just have to look at it from a different angle. You have to reframe it. You have to redefine the problem.
Right.
And so you have to be willing to look at it from all those different angles to see what are you not seeing when it feels like it's an impossible task. I think then it's also really important to think about who do you need on that journey. So who do you need to influence? It's not always the most obvious people. It's not maybe the person who's the head of the engineering department that you want to influence. Sometimes who you want to influence are the people you see behind the scenes, right? The ones who are actually influencing the influencers. And so you look around and you say, who are the trusted advisors in this organization or to the VC community or influencers in the marketplace? And I should go talk to them. And how do I get them engaged and enlisted in driving this idea forward? And the best way to do that, to bring someone along, is to incorporate their thoughts and their ideas and their contributions into the overall plan, because then they feel vested and they want it to succeed. And so those are the key things that I found that really help you drive success.
And ultimately, you as the leader have to stay true to yourself, right? If you've identified what your vision is and your passion and the people that you have around you, I know you're a big proponent of mentors and sponsorship, and having that kind of guidance is ultimately going to let you create all the plans, right?
Yeah. I mean, if at any point in time it feels like, you know what, this is really off track, you got to trust your gut.
Yeah.
And you have to take a step back and say, okay, so what do we have to do? And it's not a failure to take a few steps back and re-examine where you are and what you're doing and whether you're on track or on path. It's actually a sign of a very confident leader to be able to say, I think we might have taken a wrong turn at the last one.
Yeah.
We got to go back and try that part again, right? It's those people who do like dogged pursuit without checking themselves, I think, that end up really in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Just authenticity, transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you have any idea where you're going to be if we're sitting down in 20 years?
In 20 years.
Maybe retired?
So totally
Maybe working 3.5 days.
No, actually, so my plan for my afterlife, my life beyond Microsoft, beyond working in a commercial business, is actually to take all of the skills that I've had and help nonprofits put those same skills to action. I think that I have worked with a number of nonprofits who are amazing with their vision and the things that they want to get done, but it falls apart because they can't quite get that base of sponsorship. They don't know how to rally volunteers and scale through others and really bring people on that journey. Take that vision and drive it through to execution. And because of the experience I've had over the last 30 years in my career, I think that's something that I can contribute. So I plan to work with a few of them for about 3.5 days a week.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Maybe
like 3.
Maybe 4 or 5 hours a day.
Perfect.
And just continue to help them really take advantage of the way that you can do business today, which is amazing. Like the smallest, the single person, the smallest organization can have an influence and an impact in the marketplace like the very largest of companies have been able to, right?
Yeah.
You can really, your ability to reach people all over the world, utilize social media, utilize all of the different ways to recruit people and engage them and have an ongoing dialogue with them in ways that you used to have an army of people behind the scenes, and now you don't have to.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't. The cloud.
The cloud.
It's the answer to everything.
It's the great equalizer.
It is. You're right. What is it?
Democratizing
Thank you.
Data,
Yes.
IT, technology, everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Gavriella, thank you so much. I learned a lot. I hope those that are listening learned a lot and are ready to take control of their careers and their development like Gavriella has. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and please rate and review if you like what you hear. Also, follow us at MS Partner on Twitter and Facebook. Tune in next week for more great insights from business leaders and innovators shaping the tech industry today.